Electric Cafe.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Electric Cafe. In this video, I'll be playing for you, sharing, and also rating the 2001 album by Aqua Bassino called Beats and Bops. This came out on FCOM Records. You can see a couple copies here. This has always been a favorite downtempo album of mine from that time. I can remember I was 25 when this came out, 26, and I was a big fan of Aqua Bassino just a few years before that. He came before he did this album, which was a little bit more down-tempo, well, a lot more down-tempo. He used to do some deep house records in like 95, 96, and 97 when he first came up, including, here's a couple copies of Pools, Deeper, and also Swirl. So these are some great EPs, and I also have a couple of these on vinyl. Some really good deep house tracks. There's a couple tracks from these that ended up being on this particular album, and so this album does feel a little bit like a compilation. But considering this is his first album and most of the songs are new, I do kind of consider this an album. But it does have a little bit of a compilation feel, and there are some tracks that are probably mixed and maybe mastered in different years. Maybe like one's done in like 1998 and one's done right before it was released. So there is some differences of levels. I think that's probably the only drawback of the album. There's one song at the end that's particularly very loud, and it kind of, I wouldn't say it ruins the end of the CD, but I think it's the last track, and it's just, maybe it's the second to last track. It's just super loud. I always forget it. I mean, I always just remember, it's one of those CDs, you ever had a CD like that where you just know there's maybe an annoying point coming up, or just a really loud part in the album that sort of ruins it. I can think of like Aphex Twin and I Care Because I Do. There's a track towards the end where it sounds like he's in the studio and he kind of yells at somebody, and it just sounds really loud and it sounds really strange. But it's kind of cool in a way, but it's just really odd, and I never play that track because it's such a great album. One of my favorite Aphex Twin albums of all time. And then you get to that track and you're like, you want to skip it, and it just kind of is loud and stuff like that. So there's a particular track on the end of this that almost ruins, I wouldn't say it ruins the CD at all, but it just kind of ruins playing it all at once. It's just, it's not a good track. I think it's track number, I think it's the one called Too Hard, Try and Find, and which is actually my least favorite track when I rated it, and I think that's the track, and maybe that's not all the reason why that it is my least favorite, but it is a small part of it. But in every other thing I could say about this album is just nothing but glowing results on this album. If you ever want an album that sort of has a little bit of Balearic and lounge feel and down tempo, but even has like a little bit of house music, because he came from the deep house period. And for the label, because FCOM was sort of known for being a dance label, more techno and trance at the beginning, coming out of FNAC Records before that. And again, it's a French label. And then sort of the mid-90s, they started to do some house music, and then started to evolve into some full-length albums. And Laurent Garnier, who started the label, really started to recognize that there was a lot of other great artists doing electronic music, and knowing Laurent Garnier, just a wide range of tastes. It makes sense that he's gonna put out other music from other styles of music that he really likes. And if you know his DJing, you know his quality of music and his taste in music, like he's top notch as far as like finding good music. And his label is littered with great albums. I did. There's another one in this series Downtempo I'm doing. Actually two. One from Averill and also one from a reminiscent Drive. So I've done those two albums as well. So there's quite a bit of great music on FCOM Records. But this album, Balearic, lounge, has a jazzy feel. It's one of those rainy day CDs too. And there's a little bit of a house in here, a little bit of Latin flavor with the opening track called Ola. And, great thing about Aqua Bassino, especially coming from the deep house side, is he does some great bass lines. Like, I can remember in this particular time, I had a pretty large subwoofer in my car. It was if you guys know stereo speakers, I was really into stereo systems in the 90s and even in the late 80s, back when car culture and speaker competitions were huge. When I was growing up, before I was even a teenager, we were huge into that. When growing up in California or in Florida, it's just the car culture was huge with lowriders and big speakers and stereo competitions. And at the time, the JL Audio just came out with their W series around 2000, and I had just got a brand new car, and I put a JL W7 in there, and it was the 12.5 speaker. It was a 65 magnet speaker. It was just huge, and it was just 112 in the back of my pretty big trunk on my Audi. And it was just so deep, and this is one of my favorite CDs to play because the bass lines in here are just great. Really good production. Again, there's some tracks that are kind of mixed, maybe not equally and done at different times. So there's the cohesiveness in the volumes of the tracks and the mixing is a little bit off on a few tracks, but as far as like the overall differences in the tracks and just a variety of tracks in here is just great. There's some really good vocals on here as well, like the track Love Is Here to Stay and Moonlight. Also the track Time is a favorite. It's just classy track after classy track on this album. It just gets really high marks for me. Probably my favorite track is Spirits with Jive, which is sort of like an African chill track, and has a little bit of house feel, but just has some really great instrumentation on here. And that's the other great thing about this album is there's a lot of real instrument playing on here. Everything from piano to some guitar to some bass. I think there's some horns on here. There's also some light percussion in here. There's a lot of great small things in here like chimes and just really great instrumentation. If you hear the track towards the end called Spirits with Jive, if I can recommend one track, it's just like an African chill track with just great instrumentation and such a cool vibe, and just it's very it almost feels like you're like in some kind of like oasis in Africa. It just has a beautiful, relaxing, aquatic feel in it. It's just really great. I really love that track. Also, With You is a really good track. Nana's Waltz, the last track on here, just a perfect, gentle ending. One of my favorite tracks is Moonlight, which is one of the down-tempo tracks. It's almost like an ambient track with just this beautiful voice on it. If there's one track in here I would recommend listening to is Moonlight. But then there's some really good house tracks in here too. Baby Come On, Ola, Time, Jazzy. Milano Bossa is one of my favorite tracks. Harkens back to his classic EPs, a little bit more of a light tech house feel, but a little bit of a house feel and deep house. But just a fantastic CD. I can't recommend this CD enough. And definitely, if you like what you hear, or if you like deep house, check out Aqua Bassino's back catalog. Just amazing stuff. The funny thing is I like this album so much, and I never heard his second album. He only had 2 albums. I think the second one came out in like 2004, and I will review it in the future, and I can't wait to hear that. But it's funny how you get really into artists. That happens with electronic music. I think probably more so than other people, like with other genres. But I listen to so much music, and sometimes I'll get really into an artist for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and then I'll just move on and kind of forget about that artist. But not forget that I don't like that artist a lot, but, I like to get a variety of people's music, and so I can kind of feel like, okay, I'll buy their new music and then let it kind of settle down for a few years and get used to it, and then I'll kind of come back to it and see if they change their style or nothing. But a lot of times it's just I'm going on to different artists every few years that it's not necessarily intentional that I don't really like it. I don't think that they can improve or evolve. It's just, there's so much music going on. I don't like to stay with one artist for more than like 5 to 10 years at the most, and then I kind of move on, and then it seems like I come back maybe another decade later and start listening to them again. There's so many on FCOM that are like that, because the period of like 1993 to 2003. It was one of my favorite labels at the time, And then, you kind of get out of different labels and you go into other ones and you sort of forget about them. And there's still quite a few albums that I need to check in the later period of FCOM Records from some of these artists that I'm mentioning today, that I mentioned today with like Aqua Bassino and, well, I recommended the other album from A Reminiscent Drive, but also I think Averill has another couple albums as well, and so I'll have to check out some of his too. I love to turn people on to new music, and I don't get to DJ that often, this kind of music out and about, just because there's not a lot of live venues that I can. But I would love to, in some ways, share music with you guys and turn you guys on to something new, and that's what this channel is about, is playing great music, and hopefully you finding new music and new artists and new labels that you really like their sound, you really get into, and hopefully you appreciate that and enjoy that. So let's listen to Beats and Bops, really good album.
Jiwe.